So windows in the 116 fail generally for a couple of reasons. One is either a bent regulator you can see on the left and the cogs don't line up with the teeth of the motor, or the second one is the channel at the bottom of the window rusts out and then it separates from the regulator, which you'll see later. So here I'm attaching a regulator to a motor with three 10mm bolts before putting it back into the door frame. Rarely the motors almost stall in that the teeth on the motor sort of bind up, and if you just give them a bit of a wiggle after detaching the regulator, they can start working again. In this case, that didn't fix it and the motor was actually failing, so I've replaced this with a rec unit, and you can see it about to go back in. Now the Australian 116s actually have a cross member within the door skin, which actually makes getting these in and out a bit harder than the European version, but for the rear door this is not that complicated. Each regulator is separate for every door. Now you can see here the regulator working with the motor being controlled by the front window switch. These motors won't work unless all switches are plugged in. That's why I've got a spare rear electric switch plugged into the clip you can see. So here's a regulator going in, and I've got to line up the two 10mm bolts and then the area for the bolt to come in from the external side. So getting the three of these lined up is required, and sometimes you need someone to put the arm of the regulator down with the motor while you're lining it up. Be also careful if you've got tinted windows that if that arm of the regulator is up, you're not scratching your surface, which is very easy to do and kind of disappointing when you're finishing up. One aspect I wasn't actually or hadn't thought about when I was doing this job, the wiring harnesses for the motors actually differ on early and late motors. The early motors actually have the power and earth come off to a separate block effectively screwed to the door skin, whereas the later motors, which is what this car was from, had a longer harness that go directly into the switch. So in this case I was actually using an early motor off a later car, and so I needed to actually cut the harness off the failed motor and solder it on so I had the correct terminals which would then fit into the electric switch you can see. So we're now getting to the point of attaching the regulator arm to the sliding frame on the window, and there's effectively four pieces here you need. You need the one sliding white plastic clip that's going to fit from the regulator into the bracket on the window, and you can see that channel at the bottom of the window which sometimes rusts out, which is why failure occurs. After you've got that white sliding bracket on what we'll call the inside of the channel, there's then three pieces on the outside or the external side. This starts with a plastic washer. It's followed by this multi-armed spider-like bracket, which is convex, and then finally the sliding clip. So there goes that spider bracket going on. The sliding clip can be very annoying because you've got to make sure that you've pushed this regulator arm in completely, otherwise you will not be able to find the channel to put that on. You'll be able to see in the following video from below, which are not very high quality, sorry, the channel where that clip slides into. So you can see the outside where there's that spider bracket, and now the bracket's on, compressing that in. And here's the finished product going up and down.
Keep going.
Happy days, and as always there's a
there.
bunch of grease all over the window, and there's the longer wiring harness soldered in, so that problem's now ticked off.